Hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar. There's lots of people joining, and while we wait for people to come in, let me just tell you about a couple of things. First up, we've just launched the 2020 ECOE Community Fund to support local organisations to run projects related to saving energy and fighting fuel poverty, and there's £6,790 potentially available to local organisations. If you know anybody who that might help, do let them know. I will just put that in the chat now. That money comes from our Solar PV 3 and Healthy Homes for Wellbeing projects, as well as donations from members. Thanks to all of those who have contributed. We have another pot of funding, the Healthy Homes Hardship Fund, for people in fuel poverty who need help but can't get it elsewhere. We're running our Winter Warm campaign to raise money for them at the moment. Again, please follow the link I'm posting and help if possible. And finally, if you want to know more about fuel poverty problems that Healthy Homes fights, we're running another webinar a week on Friday with Ben Bradshaw, MP for Exeter, at 2 p.m. And again, follow the link if you're interested. So I think we're doing all right. We've got about 40 people here, so I think we can get started. So welcome to the second of the series of Exeter Community Energy webinars that we're calling Wise Up for the Energy Transition. We're moving on to what is really a hot topic in the UK at the moment, refitting our homes to make them greener. The idea of this series is that it will provide useful information to everyone, whether you have no starting knowledge or whether you're an expert. And on that note, I'd like to begin with a poll to work out how much the people we have here know. So can you please click on the option that best represents you? And I'll give you a little while to do that. And whilst you do, one piece of housekeeping. We're recording this to put on YouTube so others can watch it later. And so if you have a problem with that, please notify me now. So, okay, I've got 31 of 39 voted. Is anybody else going to do it? Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. Oh, we've still got a few more. Okay, I'm going to end the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we've got a good mix, reasonably well spread, but the majority, half of us, know a bit about green retrofit, then followed by quite a lot, and then about a fifth of us have already done a green retrofit. Sorry, I should show you those results, shouldn't I? There you go. So, thank you for sharing that. So our lineup this evening will start with Tara Bowers, Eco Director and Project Manager and Home Energy Advisor for Healthy Homes for Wellbeing, and she'll talk us through some of the simple and larger measures that her team offers people in fuel poverty. Then we'll have Alastair Mumford, Eco Director and Energy Manager at Devon County Council, who'll tell us about ECO's plans to help people access green retrofit services outside of the fuel poverty context. Then we'll have Mark Howard from Regen, who has over a decade of experience in the low carbon sector. He'll tell us mainly about low carbon heat solutions, including heat pumps, and touch on Energiesprong retrofit, which he's working on in the ZCAP project. Finally, we'll have Rob Rickey, architect, who'll take us through design considerations, including moisture flow. That'll take us up to about 45 minutes through, and from there we'll be open to Q&A and aim to close the meeting at 8 p.m. I'm also happy if people want to ask questions in the chat during the presentations, and perhaps we'll see them and cover them in the main discussion. So that's it from me. I'm going to be quiet now, and I'm going to hand over to Tara for our first section on healthy homes and the retrofit measures that it employs.
Okay, bear with me a second, I'll just share my screen. There we go. So yeah, as Andy explained, I'm the project manager for the Healthy Homes for Wellbeing project, which has been running since 2017. It was always an ambition of Exeter Community Energy to put some of our money back into the community via helping people in fuel poverty. So when this project was started, it was very small scale, and we've been growing at a phenomenal pace ever since. Those of you that don't know what Healthy Homes for Wellbeing is, it's basically a free energy and money saving advice scheme. And we work in tandem with the national project called LEAP, which is Local Energy Advice Partnership. LEAP is funded by energy companies. This year there are 7 of the energy companies that fund the project through their energy company obligation funding. And we are the dedicated partners with LEAP in this area. And LEAP is available to quite a wide range of people. There is an eligibility to meet, but it's basically any benefit, including child benefit. There's also a low income matrix, which is actually quite generous in terms of the income thresholds, or any health condition, and that includes diabetes, asthma, arthritis, as well as obviously more major complaints. So we find that most people that we speak to who are in the low income arena do actually qualify for the LEAP service. And even if people don't qualify for LEAP, we still continue to offer free advice within our scheme to anybody that would like to have some free advice. Depending on the eligibility though, that will dictate how much support we can give and what support is available in terms of free services or free aid. We have currently 6 home energy advisors, all fully trained to City and Guild level 3 in domestic energy awareness. And we work in 5 districts, which are shown on the screen there: Exeter, Mid Devon, East Devon, Teignbridge and Torbay. We help on average about 150 households per month. This time of year it's more than that. We're probably touching 200 households this month for November, but in the summer obviously we tend to help much fewer people. And the types of things we help with is a range of services, starting from very basic things around money and energy savings. So we start at the really basic end, just tips like, do you turn your lights off when you're not needing them on? And other general tips and savings around energy and water use. We do tariff check-in for people and actually help them do the switches. Bear in mind that a lot of people we work with are highly vulnerable. A lot of them are elderly and are not at all tech savvy. And today's energy arena is very, very heavy on tech. And we're helping vulnerable people every day to actually do tariff check-in and switching. And one of my team actually did a very large switch yesterday, which I'm very proud of. He saved somebody £60 a month. It was a 15-minute phone call, so that was a great achievement to save someone £720 in a very short space of time. We also check for discounts. There are some discounts available on water with South West Water, and there's the Warm Home Discount Scheme, which is available on electricity accounts. Another thing that people often miss is whether to check with their council tax providers if they qualify for any discounts. Again, we were helping somebody a couple of weeks ago who is employed, but we pointed out to her her income was below threshold and she got a discount of £40 a month on her council tax. So these are really simple things that we're doing for people, but it helps free up money that they can then use to spend on other things like staying warm. We do lots of other general advice around smart meters, benefits, checks and debt help. And also, as Andy mentioned at the beginning, we've got our own hardship fund too, which at this time of year is under pressure. We're providing things like electric heaters for when people have got broken heating. We're providing appliances when they've broken, like fridges or washing machines and cookers, for example. We also do on the home visits a number of simple measures, and now we're starting to get into the very bottom end of the retrofit discussions we're having today. So we do things like draft proofing and adding brushes to doors and letterboxes. Other energy saving things that we offer people are hot water cylinder jackets to keep their hot water tanks warmer longer, chimney balloons to put up unused chimneys to stop drafts coming down. And we've got things like TV standby plugs and LED light bulbs that we change as standard. All of those things we give for free to the people that fall within our Healthy Homes for Wellbeing service. And obviously, as you'll gather from that list, is one of the main things we're trying to do is plug leaks. If we've got leaky, drafty homes, that's one of the things we want to start solving straight away, as well as obviously maximising on energy efficiency and maximising on money saving measures. Once we've done all of those, we then get into the bigger measures. So this is where we really start to put our toe in the water regarding retrofitting. So anybody that's on benefits, low incomes or with health conditions can qualify for funded measures. These include first-time central heating and boiler upgrades, boiler replacements. Generally, we're helping people who've got boilers of 10 years or more upgrade to more efficient ones. And we also then look at insulation measures like loft insulation, cavity wall, and also with park homes, we help them get insulation added too. So what we do is we help these people by referring them to a registered installer, and we stroke the installer, help them apply for the funding. Generally speaking, the people we're working for, we get them these free measures. And if we can't get them free measures, we help them find ways to pay for the top-ups that might be required if the funding doesn't pay for the whole measure. But generally speaking, we're helping people get these things for free. So that's a real whistle-stop tour of what we do on Healthy Homes for Wellbeing. And obviously at the end, if anyone's got any questions, I'll be happy to take them and answer any through the chat. But I think I now hand over to Alastair to talk about the next step on our retrofit programme.
Thanks, Tara. Yeah, Alastair is happy is next up, you're right. So let's just bring him on. Yeah, just if you'd like to kind of say a little bit about where the new retrofit work that we're planning will take over.
Yeah, so at our annual general meetings or any events we have for discussing and talking about things that we should be doing, retrofit has generally come up for the last few years, and we've never really been able to give a sort of well, a good response, I suppose, to it. But I think we're getting there slowly but surely, and that's primarily down to retrofit just being such a complicated area to do. It's just there's loads of different measures dealing with people's houses. It's just not as simple as putting PV on a roof. But as I say, we're making some progress. So we've been listening a lot to an organisation called Carbon Co-op, which is based up in Manchester, and they're a cooperative, I think, but definitely a sort of not-for-profit community sector type organisation. And they've been focusing on the able to pay market. And I think that's probably the right strategy, really. And so that's what we're thinking, that primarily we'll focus on able to pay and see how we can support those people in delivering retrofits of their properties. So one of the first things we want to try and do is a bit of a sort of mapping exercise or market research to try and look at the area. And again, we'll be following the Carbon Co-op process on that. So they're going to be doing, well, we need to get it all sorted out, but we're hoping they're going to be doing some analysis of Exeter and maybe the sort of wider environment. We'll probably try and do the whole of Devon, but that'll be through work with Devon County Council. But anyway, it'll give us data on Exeter, on how big the able to pay market is, where it is, and and what sort of properties we're looking at. And importantly, it will hopefully give us an understanding of what the supply chain's like. You know, Tara and her team know quite a lot of suppliers. I know through sort of personal work on my house and work in the industry, but we really need to get a good idea of who the right installers are out there that we can work with. And also we're going to be training up, or we are training up some of our eco volunteers and contractors to be retrofit coordinators. So this is a standard. I don't know whether Mark might be talking about it later on, but there's a new standard that's come out called PAS 2035, should be on all your Christmas reading lists. And in there, it's a really important intervention for the retrofit area, and it sort of comes up with these roles. And one of the really important roles is a retrofit coordinator that can support people through the retrofit process. And obviously that's exactly what ECO wants to do. We want to support people in delivering retrofits on their property. So that's a sort of role that we've got, potentially 3 people by the end of January. We should have 3 people trained up as retrofit coordinators, so they'll be fully skilled, and that will build on Tara's team, where she's got a number of what would be classed under PAS 2035 as retrofit advisors. So really quite quickly we should have a bit of capacity to do some stuff. In the meantime, we're taking details of anybody who's interested in getting some advice from us. My colleague Rory, a fellow director, is sort of heading up that, so that we can start to get some information, and then hopefully, obviously after the lockdown and social distancing, etc., then we can actually start to go to people's houses and give them some advice and so forth. And so that's probably where we are with that. Also, more broadly, ECO is going to be providing services to the Green Homes Grant Local Authority Delivery Scheme that Devon County Council are delivering. So so that will be ECO building on Tara and her team's work, really, but working with a number of more properties that are in either, well, in fuel poverty, but quite a broad definition of that, but properties that desperately need, you know, really leaky properties. Oh, my daughter wants to come in and say goodnight to everybody. Let's say goodnight. Say goodnight. Oh, she's going to be scared. There you go. Not you as well, please. No, no. I thought I'd locked myself away well enough, but so the where was it? Yes, so the greenhouse grant. So that will start soon, and then that'll be a number of properties that we'll be supporting over the next wee while, really. So that'll be a great opportunity. It gives a bit more revenue to come into ECO for our retrofit work, but also gives us more experience of supporting people with delivering that type of stuff. So and then Andy, do you just want me to quickly mention about Green Homes Grant as well, or?
Sure. I mean, I'm interested to know what the Green Homes Grant Delivery Scheme involves exactly. Is it, you know, are we working with people to try and help them get work done under the Green Homes Grant? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so the Green Homes Grant Local Authority Delivery Scheme, catchy, GHG lads, that's, I say, particularly for people in G to E rated houses, so pretty poorly insulated properties, and they get full funding, so they get up to £10,000 to do some measures on the property. And so ECO's role is going to be supporting them through that process, acting as the retrofit coordinator. But more broadly, you know, with the able to pay market that we're going to be doing, we would obviously be helping people to access the Green Home Grant as well. The problem is with the Green Home Grant, for sort of outside of the GHG lads, outside of the local delivery scheme, the voucher scheme that we can all, anybody can access, is that it was a bit of a fly-by-night policy. It's welcome, but it's a bit rushed, and so there aren't that many retrofit installers out there. So I think at the moment, a lot of our support maybe for people who want to access that is going to be a concern, I suppose, really, about finding the right retrofit installer, the right company to be able to do the work, that can access the grant, but to say, deliver the measures you want. I know from my own house, I've looked into it, and they look to, you know, I'm interested in underfloor insulation, and the system they wanted to use was, well, it uses a Celotex as a product, but it's not a breathable system, and Rob's going to be talking more about that, and that's not something I want. But if I want to use the Green Home Grant voucher, that's what I'm going to have to do. So it just stops me from doing that. So one of the other things we're interested in doing, and again, this is more with my sort of Devon County Council hat on, Is seeing whether there's a role for ECOE to become a retrofit installer, which again is retrofit coordinators, retrofit advisors. It's another sort of defined term under PAS 2035. But it's to become a retrofit installer, to be like a main contractor, so that we can get all of the accreditations that are needed to enable us to access the Green Homes grant, but then bring in verified installers that we like, that we want to work with, that we know will do a good job, and we'll put in systems that are appropriate to buildings. That's very much in the early stage at the moment. We're just trying to work out whether it's viable or not, but it's definitely a possibility. Hopefully it would be a role that would only be an interim measure, because one of the reasons why we're not seeing many companies get involved with the Green Homes grant is because they see it being a short-term initiative. At the moment, it's budgeted till March next year. So why would anybody want to go to all of the expense of getting the standards and the verification for something that's only budgeted till March? However, in today's announcement from the government, it does look like they're going to extend it for another year. How much money they're putting behind it, I don't know, because they've sort of mixed up a few initiatives within this £1 billion of extra money. Although it's not totally clear whether it's extra money, and maybe Mark might be able to comment on that. But that's welcome. So we might see more retrofit installers get involved. And that could mean that either ECOE doesn't need to become a retrofit installer, or that it will only be for a short time. And then we'll see the whole of the supply chain expand. And every single contractor out there will be certified to be able to do these things. That's probably cloud cuckoo land, but anyway, we'll wait and see what the right intervention is going to be.
And so another question I had was just, you mentioned the carbon co-op model, and as I understand it, that involves people having the skills to go and visit properties to recommend action. Is that right? Or can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so the carbon co-op have been doing like the retrofit coordinator, I suppose, but for quite some time before it's become a defined term. So they will engage with people who are interested in doing a retrofit. They'll go out, have a look at the building, give them some initial ideas, some feedback. They'll then maybe bring in a designer if that's needed to come up with the design for the solutions or the different measures, the technical support. They'll then, I think they've got a list of sort of verified suppliers, and they'll put them in touch with those suppliers as well, help them to get the quotes and so forth. And then the works will start, and again, they'll just support them through that process through the works as well. So very much the sort of handheld exercise that is desperately needed, because this is complex stuff really. And we need to make sure that, obviously we're all trying to do this to get the carbon down. You can have all these measures done, and as Rob probably will highlight, and not actually deliver the carbon benefit that you're supposed to be doing because of the installation hasn't been done right or the design hasn't been done right. So having that third party verification support to make sure things are done correctly is really important.
Okay, yeah. So, and the vision is that we'll kind of follow that model,
Yes.
I presume. Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
very much so. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Alistair. I've got some questions about smart meters and insulation. It looks like Tara's dealt with the one about smart meters. I don't know if you're the man for those, or whether we should leave those for people like Mark and Mark.
Yeah,
and...
give Mark smart meter questions. He's an expert in that.
Okay.
There's nothing he doesn't know about smart meters.
Okie doke. Great. Well, thanks a lot, Alistair. So next up then is Mark, who is he's much more of a technical expert, I think, on this front. And I invited him to talk a bit about renewable heat and Energiesprong. But if you want to get the sense there's something else you might like to diverge onto, please do feel free. But take it away, Mark.
Great. Well, thanks, Andy and Alistair. Yeah, so as Andy says, I've got quite a technical background. I spent quite a few years designing and installing domestic renewable heating systems. So I've got a lot of experience for sort of hand-on working with heat pumps and biomass boilers and solar thermal and all those sorts of things. I've come today sort of with my future-looking hat on to sort of look forward to how is the future of heat going to change, and where might we go? So I'll run through a few slides, but I'm definitely happy to take questions if there are any. So let me just see if I can share this screen. Okay, can you guys see that? Good, thanks, Rob. I can see a nod from you there. So I just jump into like the broad context that we're all probably quite aware of, but I always think it's useful to wind back to, which is that we have a net zero commitment in the UK, a 2050 commitment. It's legally binding, and that means that pretty much all sectors of industry in the UK need to change quite radically within a fairly short period of time. And that graph there shows how much our emissions need to come down. And we've made great progress in some areas like electricity. So in the last decade, electricity is decarbonised massively, but heat's still really high carbon, and 80% of us rely on burning gas, which is a fossil fuel. It's really cheap, it's really convenient, and it masks a lot of the problems that our buildings have. Again, Rob will be able to tell you all about, but you know, gas is cheap and you can deliver quite a lot of heat quite quickly with it. So it's kind of allowed us to continue to have not very effective buildings by just sort of throwing more heat at them, which isn't really doing us a particularly good service from a climate perspective and a health perspective. And we can't keep doing that. So that's kind of the focus of where this all comes from. So as I've said, you know, what we've got here at the moment is we've got quite an old building stock. We've got one of the oldest building stocks in Europe with quite poor energy ratings. And we've got this cheap gas that can kind of overcome that. But to move to sort of net zero heating, we really need to change that. And that needs to start with energy efficiency. So we need to do a lot of energy efficient retrofit to reduce the demand for heat that we have in our buildings and make our buildings more comfortable and more healthily, properly ventilated and properly insulated, and then move towards low carbon heat once we've done that. And that's partly because low carbon heat is generally a bit more complicated and expensive at the moment than gas. And also because, as I said, if you improve the efficiency of the building, you get better comfort and better outcomes for the people in them. So it's quite a big challenge. We've got about 28 million homes in the UK, most of which are still going to be here in 2050. Often with energy efficiency policy, we hear people talking about new build, and you can kind of park the problem because we'll build lots of efficient new build. But actually 80% of the homes that we'll have in 2050 are the homes that we're all sat in now that already exist. So there's quite a big challenge there, and that building that retrofit supply chain that Alistair talks about, you know, we're right at the start of that journey now, and that supply chain needs to get really, really big pretty quick. So I'm going to kind of pass on talking in any great depth about the energy efficiency stuff, because I think that's already been covered quite a lot, and I think Rob has got infinitely higher levels of wisdom when it comes to energy efficiency and insulation measures than I. So I'll talk a little bit about what I know better, which is heating systems. You know, the good thing is that we have lots of low carbon heating options. At the moment, we're all kind of used to mainly everyone's on gas. About 80% of us are on gas, and the future is unlikely to be that we have that same sort of one size fits all solution. We'll move to more efficient homes through retrofit and you know, more efficient new build, and then we're more likely to see a sort of patchwork of regional solutions that make use of local energy sources. So heat networks are where you tend to have a centralized heat source and pipes under the ground, a bit like the gas network or the water network, that distribute that heat to urban areas. And those can take advantage of sources of waste heat. So you can extract heat using a water source heat pump from the river.
Oh. Is Mark freezing for everybody or just me?
I think it's for everybody.
Okay.
I'm frozen.
So there's a question there about hydrogen heating, which I think is still pretty far away, to be honest, which is why it's got a big question mark. Let me just see whether Mark is going to come back, or I'll just stop him sharing for a moment.
Could I just say about that, Andy? We have a demonstration house in Devon that's heated with hydrogen. The autarkic house, which is down between sort of around Ken Ford and Star Cross. And it's just been completed. We're supposed to have a site visit, but we had another lockdown. I haven't seen it yet. But they're making their own hydrogen using solar power. So it's a complete off-grid solution, but highly technical and expensive at the moment. So, but hopefully I can report once we get more information about that. They're going to have open to the public and schools and things. So they want to push, push the information out about hydrogen. So that's coming.
What was it? Where is it? And what was it called?
It's called the autarkic house, and it's near Ken Ford and Star Cross, in that area.
Okie doke.
Yeah.
And I saw a question about insulation as well, whilst we're waiting to see whether Mark is going to come back. I don't know whether he's here.
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Sorry, I do apologise. Very occasionally my internet, despite being fibre and bang in the middle of Exeter, every now and then it likes to throw one.
Okie doke. Let me just see. I can't.
Would you like me to go back to where I was? I'm not sure at what point I left you.
Your video has turned off. So
yeah, I turned my video off because
right. Oh, let's leave it off then.
I thought that might be the cause of my woes.
Okay.
But let me give it a go.
Yeah.
So I'm back on screen share.
Okie doke.
So I was happily talking about heat networks. I don't know how much, if any of that you heard.
Just beginning to talk about them flowing around towns, I think, pretty much.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to say really is that we're unlikely to have 80% of us all having one type of heat in the future. We're more likely to be using things like in Exeter we could use water source heat pumps to extract heat from the River Exe.
You've gone again a little bit. So can we do this? Can you share your screen without having video?
Let me try.
I can hear you again fine now. So you're saying something about Bristol?
So lots of sort of urban areas at the moment are planning these heat networks that will make use of these sort of large resources of heat that wouldn't.
Oh dear.
And did you stop Mark with Rob, maybe?
Yes, that's a good idea.
The access.
Maybe his bandwidth will improve.
Yeah. Mark, we've lost you again. Perhaps we'll ask Rob to step in, and we'll try again in a second. So sorry about that, everyone. So Rob, are you ready to take over?
Yeah, fine. I can do that. I'll just do it quick share screen myself. Get straight into it.
There's a quick question about, do you know the cost per kilowatt heating of the hydrogen house? That seems like not the kind of information I would have at my fingertips.
Come on. No, I don't know about the cost, but I know that the equipment is have limited availability and quite expensive at the moment, I think. And making your own hydrogen is more expensive as well. So, right. Well, what I want to talk about is step back a little bit and talk about, this sort of supports the need for a retrofit coordinator, or put in a plug for architects also. But so we've got a system which includes an environment, a local environment, a building, and people, and they interact in quite complex ways. And this is why it's a bit, these government initiatives that just offer a sort of patchwork of measures sometimes have unintended consequences. People may have heard of people getting double glazing, for example, having mold growing in their house for the first time. So I want to talk about what is human comfort, first of all, because I think we don't really think about this. Humans are sensitive to temperature mainly, but not air quality. And we don't always understand the relationship. So we've got some examples of discomfort, which might make it easier to understand. So this lady's having a cold draft through a window. We all understand that one. So she's going to shut the window. If it's a trickle vent, she might shut the trickle vent and then forget about it. So her ventilation system is shut down. And the chap on the bonfire has got what's called asymmetric heating. He's hot on the front, cold on the back. And if you're in a drafty old farmhouse with an aga, you stand in front of the aga and you're warm on the front, but you're cold on the back. It's not exactly comfort. The chap in the chair has got a situation with cold feet, hot head, where he's got the heating whacked up. So he's got hot air at the top of the room, but cold air coming in from the floor, or like he's got a grill there. So that's not very comfortable. And then the barefoot man over here has just got some cold surfaces, so he's not very comfortable. He can't move around. So this is called a combination of air movement and radiant heat and air temperature. And back in the 50s, a Danish researcher called Povel Olefanger tried to come up with a model to predict who would be comfortable with what circumstance. And you can see that there are six ingredients to human comfort, air temperature being only one of them, radiant temperature is another one. Relative humidity plays a part, especially in warmer climates. Air velocity can be a source of comfort or discomfort. So in cold weather, it's discomfort. In hot weather, it's you want a little breeze. Activity rate comes into it. So if you're doing a metalworking factory, you've got one comfort temperature, and if it's a nursing home, you might have another comfort temperature. And clothing level plays a part as well. So all these things contribute to human comfort. And then we've got the health aspect, which I like to focus. This is an important part of fuel poverty, and a hidden cost of fuel poverty is health. So what I was sort of surprised to learn, I'm going to move my thing over here, is that in the middle, we have relative humidity, which I don't have time to discuss in detail but we sort of have the idea of relative humidity. In this middle zone is the sweet spot where you want your house to rest. Because, as you can see here, bacteria thrive in very dry air and in very moist air, both. And same thing with viruses. We're focused a bit on virus at the moment. But viruses are less likely to propagate in this middle zone of humidity. Fungus grows better in moist conditions. Dust mites, same thing, which is a trigger for asthma. Respiratory infections are made worse by very dry air. And then asthma is made worse by dry and moist air. So moisture management within the house is really important, as is fresh air at the same time. So we've got this dilemma of excluding drafts but with moisture buildup. How do we deal with that? So that is why we need retrofit coordinators to look at the whole picture. Then we look at the actual health of the building itself, and studies have shown 80% of structural failures in buildings are moisture related. So it's not just a bit of mold on the wall, but the structure's at risk if we're not dealing with moisture in buildings. And again, this is another complicated area. I'm not trying to scare people off here, but I just want to point out that these are they're not simple solutions. We also want to make sure if we start doing interventions on a dwelling, that we don't cause more problems or head off opportunities to deal with these in a better way. So here's a little picture of moisture sources in a dwelling, starting with roof leaks, guttering, water coming down the chimney, defective pointing. This all contributes. But then inside, we've got plumbing leaks, condensation. We've got people giving off moisture themselves, cooking, showers, all of that, spillage, and then ground moisture. So these are all possible sources of moisture. And but you need some knowledge to be able to identify the source of your moisture problem. And the fact is that current building regs, Part F of the building regulations, with intermittent fans and trickle vents, don't actually deliver good air quality in most cases. Because I said at the beginning, a lot of people get a cold draft off of a trickle vent, close the trickle vent, they'll turn the fan off because it's too noisy in the kitchen or the noisy in the bathroom, and then they have no ventilation, and all this moisture is still coming on a daily basis. This is a tool from the Sustainable Traditional Building Alliance. I've asked Andy if we can, there'll be a recording of this, and I've got links in the bottom of my slides if you want to look this stuff up. But it just points out the interrelation between each intervention. So this one is just loft insulation up here. I've got a mouse here, sorry. This is just loft insulation, but it affects a number of other elements of the house that need looking at when you're doing loft insulation, to think about anyway. So there's 8 technical concerns, a heritage concern, an energy concern. So this highlights the need for a whole house approach, and to, looking forward to all the methods you might have. This is my own house, and I'm showing this because this is a complete house project at once. It's not a step-by-step job. There's before and after, and so we've got quite a bit of external wall insulation, new windows, and this is the south elevation, so we've increased the windows to the south end of view. New loft insulation, but I had a problem, which is a classic problem for British houses of this period. And these are views from this is free software called Therm from America. And down here you could see there's a cavity wall, which has some cavity insulation in it, external wall insulation on the outside, more loft insulation on the top. But you can see they don't join up here in the corner. And when you model this, when it's 0 outside and 20 degrees inside, you can see that there's this cool colors are coming in on the top of the block wall. So right at the top of the wall where it meets the ceiling, it's predicted to be 11.8 degrees on that block work. And then down here in the corner, I've got another free tool, which is a dew point calculator. But what this says, if it's 20 degrees in the house, and this is my bathroom, I'm having a shower, and the relative humidity goes up to 80%. The dew point is 16 degrees. So this wall is well below the dew point. It's going to be streaming with water, and you may have experienced that in your own house. So I don't have time to show you the solution, but anyway, I just wanted to show you the problem. So all good intentions, I'm going to whack a load of insulation in my house, but I've suddenly caused myself a problem here. And then that's prime territory for mold growth, which is I don't want in my house. So yeah, so this is and there's a lot of tools, and this is again why we need lots of education and training, so that more people can have an understanding of these complex relationships between people, buildings, and the outside environment. This is I said I'm a passive house designer, so this is the passive house approach, but it just emphasizes the need for thermal insulation, better windows, adequate ventilation, air tightness, and thermal bridge, so the junctions which is what I just showed you, a bad junction, eliminating those to get the whole house operating in a healthy way for the occupants. And I forgot to put my timer on, but I'm probably out of time, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah. So with where you had that image with the thermal gradient, what exactly was that we were looking at? Was it a roof?
So wall to roof junction. Right,
and it's where the cavity wall insulation ends and the roof begins that you've got.
Yeah, and my extra insulation is on the outside, so it's even further away from that junction, because that's a typical way of building a roof in the UK on a cavity wall. You don't get a connection between the insulation.
So that's a little bit of a a story about the unintended consequences, I suppose, of retrofit or, you know, insulation, and
Exactly, yeah.
something we need to be aware of, and that's why we need kind of knowledgeable people like advisors and people like yourself, architects. So should we give Mark another go? I don't know if we can manage it, whether you can whiz through things reasonably quickly.
Yeah, I can speak very quickly if required. Yeah, really sorry about that. I've tried, now my children have gone to bed, I've tried relocating to a different part of the house where I might have better luck. So I'd say wave at me if it's all going wrong, but you will freeze up if that happens. So I'll just keep talking until someone tells me not to. Can you all hear me okay now? You can see my screen back
Yep.
on.
Yeah, you're all
Okay,
good.
great. So yeah, I was talking a bit about, you know, we probably have lots of different heat solutions. Heat networks are likely to be part of that. Where we don't have things like heat networks or shared energy sources, we're probably going to be using things like air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, which take, they're basically fridges that work in reverse. So a fridge moves heat from the food you put inside it to the back of the fridge, which is why the back of the fridge is hot and your food gets cold. And a heat pump does the same thing. It moves heat from either the outside air or from the ground, and it puts it in your house into your radiators. And it's a way of very efficiently using electricity to heat your house. We've got options like biomass boilers as well. Those are all solutions that can be put into place now. And in a lot of homes are probably the best solution. Certainly off gas, those are likely to be the solutions that we see in the future. At the moment, for everyone who's on gas, about 80% of people, there is a big question mark over whether we might have some low carbon gases coming in the future, and hydrogen is there. So the picture I've put up there is one of Worcester Bosch's sort of test boilers that they've got sort of ready, and a couple of firms, Baxi I think, and Worcester Bosch, and a couple of others have got hydrogen ready boilers. But we don't have hydrogen production at scale at the moment, and although a lot's produced globally, it's not produced in a low carbon way. So it would actually be higher carbon at the moment if you used hydrogen in the way we produce it. So it's a bit of a question mark there. It's kind of, I think it's a very tempting political move, and for a lot of us, because we wouldn't have to retrofit our homes, make as many changes, but it might be quite expensive. And there's a lot of question marks over whether we could produce it in the right volume at an appropriate cost and within the timescales we need to deal with the climate emergency. So it's something that's there, and it's something that the government's kicking around quite a lot, and a lot of research projects are looking at, but there's a lot of uncertainty there. I don't think we could expect to see hydrogen available at any scale for at least a decade. So in terms of tackling the climate emergency, the things that we've got are the things that we need to deploy now. And so that is, energy efficiency is the basis for everything. Heat pumps where they can be deployed easily, so houses that are easily made energy efficient. Identifying those areas where we can have shared heat networks, shared use of heat sources. And we need some clear direction from government, regional planning, sort of in a similar way to we're talking about, Alistair's talking about here, with sort of upskilling local supply chains. All of those things need to happen. So it's a multifaceted set of solutions to a pretty big problem. But the key point, the thing that I think was touched on in the comments and that I always like to talk about, is that low carbon can be and must be better. Otherwise, it won't happen and people won't do it. There's a lot of opportunities that I know Rob will have just talked about. I missed half of because of my bad internet, but he would have talked about being more comfortable and being healthier in an energy efficient home. I'm sure that was covered. And the energy efficiency and low carbon heat can offer better comfort, better well-being in your home, financial stability and protection from price rises because you're using less energy, and smarter use of your energy, and it can generate lots of jobs, improve skills for people. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and we need to look at it in that way rather than I get quite frustrated when we tend to look at like how many pounds am I going to save for every pound invested, and that's it's a very short-sighted view of energy efficiency and low carbon. So there's a lot of opportunities there, And these are just some pictures of exciting, innovative things that are happening. I'll talk really briefly about Energiesprong, which is a whole house retrofit project that I've been involved in for a couple of years, which is just a good example of doing something exciting, making people want it, and utilising a sort of like industrialised manufacturing approach to bring down costs. So Energiesprong is a Dutch approach to whole house retrofit, where they 3D laser scan a house, they take that information away, and then they build an insulated wrap that goes around the house that also includes solar panels and a low carbon heat source. And it brings the energy demand of that house down massively to make it a net zero house. And they can deliver that on site in a couple of days, having made it off site. So they laser scan these buildings. They have manufacturing facilities that are very efficient, very accurate, not dependent on the weather, as we are often with building in the UK, where they can make these insulated facades and roofs for these buildings to be delivered to site, retrofitted with minimum disruption for residents, doing it very quickly and with a high level of quality assurance, so that you're actually getting what you're paid for. So you can design out and build out a lot of those risks. And they're doing that in the Netherlands, and they've been doing that for about 7 or 8 years now, and then they've reduced the cost of doing that by about 50%, and they're now doing it without any subsidy, because there's a market for it, because people want energy efficient homes, and landlords can charge a bit more rent for an energy efficient home because they know that their tenants have saved that much money on their bills. So I was involved in a project in Exeter delivering this. Photos I put up here, an example of a project that was completed in Nottingham, where the houses on the left were homes previously that were either incredibly expensive to heat, over £1,000 a year to heat quite a small home, or people weren't heating them because they couldn't afford to, and they were very cold and uncomfortable and stuff, with lots of mold problems. And then post the sort of Energiesprong style retrofit, they've got warm, comfortable homes that are really cheap to run. They're zero carbon, and people are a lot more comfortable, a lot more happy, and it's really it's brightened up the neighbourhood. I really like the design. It's probably a bit Marmitey, but I'm quite a fan of it. It's brightened up one of the less salubrious bits of Nottingham, and they're doing a lot of it there and having a lot of success. And it's popular. People want it, and that's what sort of the Dutch Energiesprong approach has captured really well. Is their early strapline was make the neighbours jealous, which was capturing what we need in low carbon and energy efficiency, is to make it something that people can understand and something that people want, rather than something that's kind of being foisted upon people as we must do this. So there you go.
Right.
It was my whistle stop.
Excellent.
I hope that was coherent.
Yeah. So we've got a question from James Haig here, asking whether there are cavities between the layers to prevent moisture tracking into the building with the Energiesprong.
So like the external wrap. Yeah, so Energiesprong it's not a system, so it's down to the individual contractor as to how they do it. But yeah, generally there is a cavity. There's a waterproof membrane and a vapor membrane and a wind membrane, and then a sort of cavity to prevent the two moisture tracking from one to the other. But that level of detail is getting a little bit beyond my technical knowledge. But
Okay,
as far as I know, yes, it is.
So I've got a question from Bridget Oliver. Bridget, are you able to unmute yourself and ask it, just for the panel generally?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, my question, well, it was an observation followed by a question about 12, I can't remember exactly, but 12 to 15 years ago, we had cavity wall insulation put in our house, simply because the government was saying, this is the thing to do. We paid for it ourselves. And we had it done, and gradually over the next year, 18 months, our house went damp. It wasn't when we first came, and our books got all damp, and it ruined a piano, and oh, it was dreadful. Just got worse and worse. And in the end, we had to we got in touch with a Dutch firm who said that they could cure this, and they came and put sort of they took bricks out round the base of the outside walls and put in sort of bits that sort of stuck out, but with the air could circulate. And they said they would leave that for a year, and they'd come back and see and test the house for dampness. And we got rid of the damp using that, but we had to we spent a lot of money having our house made damp and then having to undampen it. And it just seems to me ridiculous. That cavity must be there for a reason when houses are built. So why are we filling them up?
That's a great question. I mean, there's clearly a bit of an anxiety about insulation in general. I don't know whether anybody from the panel can tackle that, be that Tara or Rob or Mark.
Well, I can just say, I mean, the thing is, before you do, cavity wall insulation can work, but you need a good risk assessment of the situation. My neighbor across the road here in Crediton has had the same problem, and they had someone come out and hoover out all the insulation on their west facade, which was facing toward Dartmoor out here. So the exposure was wrong, and brick is not waterproof, and brick with poor pointing is not waterproof. There are treatments you can do to brick called brick cream, which is sort of the vapor permeable and sheds water at the same time and maybe improves that. But so it's, again, there's software to model this moisture accumulation depending on exposure. So there's ways to sort of, you need experience and expertise and maybe some computer modeling, unfortunately, to answer this question, because it's different on every house, and it is a risk. And that's why sometimes internal wall insulation is a better idea, because you don't mess with the cavity. And sometimes, like on my house, we had cavity wall insulation, but we've added external wall insulation. So now we're treating the whole wall as a solid wall now. So there's different solutions to this problem.
Okay. I think it's particularly a southwest problem as well, isn't it, Rob? Where you know, the prevailing weather that comes in off the Atlantic has a greater effect down here than, you know, if you're in Leeds.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of coastal areas. Pembrokeshire is also bad. Whole of Ireland.
Thanks, guys. There's a question from Hilary Noakes, which perhaps is for Alistair, which is, where does Devon County Council's Solar Together programme fit into this picture? We're thinking of adding battery storage to our existing PV system. I mean, Alistair, you can probably say what Solar Together is, and also whether battery and PV, you would consider that as retrofit.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Solar Together is an initiative that Devon County Council is supporting. It's run by a company called iChooser, who are Dutch. All good things seem to come from the Netherlands, but well, I don't know what iChooser is, but anyway, so it's called a reverse bulk auction, so that they're gathering interest in having solar PV, domestic interest, homes, and then they'll go out to a contractor and get a price, and that economies of scale should get you a reduction in the installation price. So in terms of, well, as part of a whole house retrofit, and you'll see from the Energiesprong approach, is about maximizing the roof space for the generation of energy. So PV is definitely, solar power is definitely a measure that needs to be included within a whole house retrofit. I think storage obviously can play its part, but that could be storage through an immersion tank, so that you're putting excess solar PV generation into a tank, or you're putting it into a battery. So yeah, I definitely think it plays a part. One of the interesting things, well, probably interesting for a geek like me in this area, is one of the problems we're having is that generally people will go in and do single measures, and you generally start with the easiest measures. So something we've probably all done is we've all replaced our incandescent light bulbs with LEDs. It's cheap, straightforward, and you get a really good payback on it. If you're looking at that from a business case point, you've just taken out the easiest measure to do. So when you go back and do the slightly more difficult one, that's going to be more difficult because you've taken away the lovely economics of the initial one, which had great payback. So if you keep doing that, all you get left with at the end is the really difficult thing to do, which will have a payback of about 100 years, and you're never going to do. So it's better to try and look at trying to do this all together. However, of course, to do it all together, you need to have more money. So I think that's another thing that ECOE hopefully will support with, and that's something that Carbon Co-op does, is come up with a plan and then work out when you're going to make these interventions. And in that sense, you get the sort of benefit of looking at it all together, but you don't potentially have to chuck all of the money in at the same time. So yeah, I think solar together is an option. I don't think it's the only option. I think, you know, everybody needs to think about getting solar PV on their roofs. Yeah, it might be a good way of doing it.
Interesting to hear. Thanks, Alistair. So I'm aware we've hit an hour, and you know, people have got lives to live. Does anybody have an urgent question that you would like to raise at this point? It might be easiest to unmic yourselves if you want to. Otherwise, I have a question for you all, which is, what do you want us to do next? These are the list, what's next on our list, but actually we'll probably be expanding the list of possibilities as you know, there's clearly a lot to be discussed. So please vote on what you might like to see in future webinars, and we can go on that. So Eleanor, are you asking, you want to see a webinar on solar PV in conjunction with hot water cylinders? I guess that's solar thermal. Is someone who has more knowledge on that?
Well, it's using the electricity from solar PV to warm up water in a hot water cylinder. So it's not solar thermal to a certain extent, and yeah, it is a really important role for solar PV in a domestic setting.
Sorry, this is Tom, Eleanor's wife. I was trying to type on her computer and I pressed enter by accident. What I was trying to say was we've just done a retrofit, and a really interesting thing we've discovered, which is worth noting. You probably know about it already, but some people probably won't, because I didn't. If you have a solar PV system and a hot water cylinder, My Energy do a great product. I forget what it's called. What it does, it diverts the energy from the grid into your hot water cylinder. And if you go on a tariff from Octopus Energy called Agile Tariff, then when there's excess energy being produced from renewables, e.g. large offshore wind farms, it'll in the middle of the night, and they'll on occasions pay you to take it back via this My Energy Eddy device back into your thermal store, your hot water tank, for use the next day. So it's worth looking at Agile Tariff and My Energy components to plug into your solar PV and hot water cylinder.
Great, thanks. Was it Tom?
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, and the interplay between if you have solar on your building and those kind of tariffs is something that I haven't quite puzzled out how to make it all work. But you know, clearly lots of discussions to be had here. So I'm going to end the poll now.
So I'll just say that follows on from, there was a discussion on the chat earlier about smart meters and the sort of value of smart meters. And one of the things that smart meters will enable is the use of those sort of smart half-hourly tariffs, like the Octopus Agile tariff, that allows you to, if you can, shift your demand to different times of day, take advantage of those.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. Right, so it's relatively evenly distributed, but people do want to know more about heat pumps most of all. So we will bear that in mind, and probably the next webinar will be in the new year. So that may well be what we do then. Maybe Mark might be happy to come back and tell us a bit more about that. So
give it a second go.
So there we go. There's clearly a good discussion about that solar PV and water combination going on in the chat here. I'm almost reluctant to end it, but I think we do need to let people get on. So thank you very much for your time, everybody. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Alistair. And thank you, Rob, for all of your contributions. Don't forget about the Winter Warmth campaign for our hardship fund, where we can help people in fuel poverty who can't get support in any other way. And we also have the Eco Community Fund, which helps organizations, other organizations seeking to fight fuel poverty and also combat climate change, do energy efficiency activities. And the next Eco webinar is actually a week on Friday. I say we're going to do the next one in the new year. That we do have one a week on Friday, which is discussing fuel poverty, and Ben Bradshaw MP will be joining Tara and team, and there'll be a discussion about what needs to be done policy-wise to help fight fuel poverty. So do sign up for that one. If you didn't see the links earlier in the chat, do visit our website. All of the information about that is in the news section on the right-hand side of the website. So thank you all for joining us as well. Hopefully you found it useful, and spread the word, discuss this with your friends, and especially, we have already had a lot of interest in the retrofit activity, but you know, I think the more the better, probably, hopefully. So, okay. Thanks everyone. I'm going to end it now. So take care, and we'll be in touch. Bye-bye.